Madison, thank you so much for joining Nonstop Nonprofit podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Is this your first time AFP, or have you been coming over the years?
So this is my first AFP ICON. I've been to another conference, LEAD, in Indianapolis, which is my hometown.
Okay.
So I was happy to drive down the street and go to that.
Yeah, awesome. So before we jump into today's topic of storytelling, tell us a little bit about yourself and your nonprofit.
I would love to. So my nonprofit really dovetails right into storytelling. I learned the power of story through it. We're called Morning Light, and we operate the Abby Hunt Bryce home in Indianapolis, which is a free hospice home. So you can imagine being terminally ill, which is 6 months or less to live. And you can imagine not having a home and not having a support system. The people we serve have both of those. And so we really try to make the end of life as peaceful, as comfortable as possible. We believe that nobody should die alone. And we believe that everybody, regardless of your background, income, should have dignity at the end of life.
Absolutely.
And the end of life is such a unique and beautiful time because people are so open and reflective and eager to share their insights, their experiences, the things that they've learned. Everybody wants to leave a legacy. And so when I started working at Morning Light and interviewing the people that we serve and just getting to know them as human beings, I developed this obsession, I guess you could say, with storytelling and legacy and just the power of all of that.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the organization? What led you to that line of work?
It's a funny story. So my background is actually event planning. So my passion is celebrating life. I love, holidays, events.
Yeah.
I went to school for that. I did one wedding and I thought, no, thank you. I don't want to do that anymore. And so I decided to use my interests, I guess, to hopefully make a difference. So I just started looking for event planning work in the nonprofit sector, and I landed at Morning Light. And so I think I have a unique perspective a little bit because I came into the end of life and senior and hospice at kind of a young age where I didn't even realize the value of what that looks like.
Yeah.
You don't, at that age, you don't really get past like the next week, right? So thinking that far ahead just wasn't something that I had done before. But as I mentioned, once I started really talking to the people that we serve and like getting to know them, I just developed an intense interest and passion for the cause. I started as an admin helping with events, and now I'm the executive director and very proud to be there.
Awesome. Amazing. So let's dive into storytelling a little bit. Arguably nonprofits have the best stories to tell.
Absolutely.
But we often don't see nonprofits tell stories well, or maybe not even at all.
Sure.
What's the importance and significance of storytelling, especially as it relates to nonprofits and fundraising and stewardship of donors and so forth?
So I'm really nerdy about storytelling because it's actually very psychological, which is something that I'm interested in. Human brains are hardwired to connect to story. We've been, consuming stories since childhood with bedtime stories. We all have our favorite Netflix show that we like to watch. People look to stories to learn, right, from other people's successes, from other people's mistakes. And so we're eager to consume them. Our brains just like them more than other forms of communication, like statistics, updates, that kind of thing. So if you can take your abstract mission, for example, free hospice housing, that's an abstract mission, but you can give it a face and a name and an identity, like Richard, someone that we've served, and tell his story. How did he get there? What kind of common denominators might he have with a donor or someone who wants to support? What might he enjoy as a human being that your audience can see themselves connecting to?
Yeah.
And then also just displaying that classic kind of struggle and then overcoming scenario, right? We all need a good struggle. All nonprofits are solving issues and conflicts and solutions.
Yep.
Infusing your story with, what that struggle is, but not focusing on that, focusing on the overcoming aspect.
Yeah.
So the resilience, the courage, the compassion, the bravery, the fun of helping someone else. If you can talk about all of those kind of qualities in your story, you'll inspire your listener to then want to join you on that story.
Yeah.
So it's super important because, first of all, you're breaking down those barriers. You're breaking down, stigma. You're giving them something interesting to consume, but then you're inviting them to become a part of the story as well.
Yeah. It reminds me, I read this book, I forget the author, but it's called Story.
Okay.
And it was a USC professor, like in the school of film school. and he talked about like every story needs, you mentioned struggle. Like he talked about it in the concept of like a climax, right? Like
Yes.
you're working up towards this climax, and then like you're taking like the audience back down the
Yes,
resolution,
exactly.
like afterwards. And that leads me into somewhat of a controversial topic, I think, with nonprofits. A lot of times, I think you have two types of like storytelling in nonprofits today. It's one is like sort of like the gravity, right?
Sure.
Like how bad it is for like these people, and you show photos that could be disingenuous or photos that maybe like remove the dignity from the individual. And then you have organizations, I think Charity Water does this really well, where they focus on the potential, the success.
Yes.
They really help bring the audience into what you can help accomplish and
Absolutely.
how you can get
hope.
there.
The hope
Thank you. I was
factor.
like
Sure.
struggling to find
Yeah,
that word.
no, exactly.
So do you think there is a right and wrong way? Do you think
I
that
do.
so I'd love to let's
I
dig
do,
into that.
yeah. So I do a lot of teaching on this, and it's really something that I think is relevant today, is the ethical component of storytelling.
Yeah.
Not exploiting people. People don't want to be cast as a victim. Nobody wants to be a victim, right? We want to showcase, look, these people were dealt a hard hand, or maybe they made some bad choices along the way that got them in a position that they're in now. Maybe they inherited this. Maybe it's stigma and society that's caused this. You never know why someone's backstory has led them to where they are. But I think it's really important to just ethically to showcase the story in a way that they would want it to be told.
Yeah.
Showcasing, like I said, their courage or their kindness or their intellect through the struggle. So we're not necessarily trying to get that shock factor out of everyone.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the gravity that I think a lot of nonprofits have done in the past, and maybe just didn't know better because, gravity, I mean, you think about the puppies with Sarah McLachlan over there.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very emotional. It's very impactful. However, I think there's a better way to do it personally, which is to showcase, the hope, like you said, and inspiring people.
Yeah.
And bringing them in that way.
I think of a brand that I often think of that's exceptional storytelling, and I think a lot of nonprofits can borrow from is Nike, right?
Yeah.
Like Nike, like they make you believe that if you wear their shoes, you're going to be an Olympian athlete, right? And that's like there's like they don't like talk about you need to work out more because you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
They're more like focus on like just this kind of like dream that at one point maybe all of us had. So I think that's interesting. What I do want to dig into is going back to sort of like why so little nonprofits tell great stories. And I think you see this in the way they budget.
Sure.
And so as an executive director, I would love to know like what's the priority of storytelling, even at the like budget level. A lot of organizations look at it as an expense, as a negative thing. And so I'd just love to like hear your thought process on and how that gets prioritized.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're a very small nonprofit, honestly. Morning Light is small. And so you have to get creative with how you're sharing your stories. Thank goodness for social media. It's free. Thank goodness for phones with photos and videos. It's free.
Yeah.
What you need to do, in my opinion, that doesn't even cost that much is just have the conversations with people. Just ask them. And I think one of the reasons that people don't tell the stories is because I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with broaching that subject with people. We're kind of almost taught not to pry, like not to ask those personal questions. However, you may be the only person in that person's life to take an interest in their life. As a nonprofit, a professional, you have, like you said, direct access to some of the most incredible stories known to man, right?
Yeah.
We are serving these really unique populations that have a story to share and maybe no one's ever asked them. So instead of worrying about like, I don't want to make them uncomfortable, of course you always give them the option to share or not.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
There's no punishment if you don't share the story. But think about what it would mean to you for someone just to come up to you and say, tell me about your life. What insights do you want to share? What legacy do you want to leave?
Yep.
What message do you have? And then we have this unique way as a nonprofit, as a following, as a voice in the community to then showcase those stories and those voices. And it doesn't take a lot of money. You can do it through email. You can do it online. One of my favorite things that I was taught, especially with social media, is the idea of this episodic approach. So you get the story, and it's a whole story, right? You touched on some of the components of a story. You have the setup, you have the confrontation, you have the climax, and then the resolution. If you can break each of those kind of components of the story up into different materials, you're introducing a character, you're introducing a hook, you're getting them interested in that person's life, But then you take them on the journey with you, and you can post multiple pieces of content. You can share multiple email updates. Here's where they were, here's where they are now, here's what they want you to know. Quotes, testimonials, getting it directly from the person also really helps with not exploiting them, as we talked about. Those direct quotes, those videos. All you have to do is open your phone and say, do you mind if I record, you sharing your story for a few minutes? It doesn't have to be production.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be bringing in these big expenses of thousands of dollars for first-class videos. We are actually quite accustomed to consuming iPhone content all the time, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to frown upon that.
Yeah.
So I really wouldn't let budget be a barrier, because you already have the tools. If you have people that work for you, you have people that you serve, you have a phone, and you have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
You've got what it takes to start sharing those stories.
Totally. Has storytelling always been a priority of your organization, or is that something that you helped kind of usher in as the executive director?
I love that question. So we didn't always share our content in the form of story.
Okay.
It used to be this abstract, right? We're free hospice. I think what I brought in, because I'm a writer by passion, I've always written, and I really appreciated the stories. I said, we need to be showcasing these human beings. We need to be saying names and showing faces. And when we did that, we actually saw a major increase. So since I've come on board for about 5 years now, and we've increased our fundraising 120%.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I think that a lot of that is just due to how we framed the language.
Yeah.
And it's a shortcut to communication.
Yeah.
And actually, I won the Storyteller of the Year award at the One Cause Raise conference in 2019 for some of the work that we've done. And the secret really is, don't let the budget be the barrier.
Yeah.
You just have to find those stories. The other little hot tip that I have that I do want to share is, if you have a great story and you've packaged a great story, you've done the work for the media. So if you start to reach out to some contacts in your hometown, or wherever your community consumes their content, news stations, newspapers, other kinds of PR, will be more interested in partnering with you because you've done the work for them. You say, listen, I have this great story. Listen to this inspiring story. I think your listeners will really resonate with it.
Yeah.
Then they don't have to come in and improv.
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing the work for them, and that really worked for us. We got in several newspapers, news stations, and I think that really helped us spread our message.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that hustle. That's a great
hustler.
tip. Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a few last questions. Rapid fire. There's no.
This is stressing me out.
there's no wrong or right answer here.
Okay.
So let's go through them.
Oh,
all right.
okay.
So movies or series?
Ooh. Series.
Series. Okay. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos.
Beach or the mountains?
Beach all day.
Beach. Oh, good. Yep. Digital reading or an actual book?
Book. I like the paper. Turn
hard
the pages.
Hard or soft cover?
Soft.
Soft.
I do. I like the soft covers.
Like easy to travel with, or you just
you can flip them and kind of move them. They're lighter.
Yeah. Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Yeah, everyone is saying ice cream. I think froyo's on its way out.
I'm sorry, but I think it had its moment.
It did. Football or football?
That's a good question. So I'm actually engaged to a UK resident.
Okay.
Yes. So he's getting me into the football. But my dad would say football. So
you're torn.
I'm torn.
Well, congratulations on the engagement.
Thanks.
All right, last one here. Moana or Aladdin?
Oh, I love this. I'm a Disney nerd completely. Okay. I can't choose. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Aladdin was my time. Moana's my kids' time. It's got a special place in both my hearts.
Yeah.
I love both.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This is fantastic.
Absolutely.